Samuel Crivella's family had been in the market business in Washington, D.C. for years before he opened a grocery on Georgia Avenue in Silver Spring in the 1930s. In 1948, Crivella bought a one-story building on East-West Highway not far from the D.C. line. It had been operating as a restaurant and bar simply called the Wayside Inn, and he changed the name to Crivella's Wayside Inn. Silver Spring was a sundown suburb when Crivella expanded there. Blacks were unable to buy or rent homes and apartments, and most businesses did not take their money. Civil rights groups fresh from a Supreme Court win in 1954 with Brown versus the Board of Education, which desegregated public schools, set their sights on public accommodations. Ever since the 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson decision, businesses legally could discriminate on the basis of skin color. It gave Jim Crow the power of law. Starting in the late 1950s, the Montgomery County NAACP chapter began compiling lists of establishments that discriminated on the basis of race. The organization sent testers into businesses to see which would serve groups of blacks and which wouldn't. These lists began putting pressure on Montgomery County businesses to abandon Jim Crow. Crivella's had been listed as one of the Silver Spring establishments that wouldn't serve blacks. Even after 1962, when the Montgomery County Council passed an open accommodations ordinance prohibiting discrimination, Crivella's refused to serve African Americans. The county's new law appeared shortly after federal agencies began moving operations into the D.C. suburbs. In late 1961, the Department of Labor announced that it was moving several hundred office workers to downtown Silver Spring. Newspapers at the time recognized that the agency's black workers would have difficulty finding places to eat and shop. That likely contributed to the law's swift passage. In April of 1962, a Department of Labor employee named Roscoe Nix tried to have lunch at Crivella's. He and the others with him were asked to leave. Nix filed the first complaint under Montgomery County's Open Accommodations Act, and the episode triggered nearly 4 years of protests and litigation. These protests included demonstrations by Julius Hobson, a well-known Washington civil rights activist. Nix's actions at Crivella's set the foundation for civil rights work and activism that dominated the remainder of his life. One Montgomery County website described Nix, who died in 2012, as one of the major architects of modern Montgomery County. Those building blocks were laid in Crivella's dining room. In 2006, Montgomery County bought the former Crivella's Wayside Inn building and demolished it, rebranding the site Bottle Works Lane to recognize the history of two nearby soda bottling plants.